Well, this is not going to be a very popular video, especially if you own a condo in Vancouver or you're thinking about buying one. But it's something you need to hear before making a decision that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because right now, there are people in Vancouver stuck in condos they can't sell, they can't rent, and can barely afford to keep. And what makes this even worse is most of them thought they were making a smart, safe decision when they bought. And the dangerous part is the assumption almost everyone makes going into these deals. They believe the worst case scenario is just losing their deposit. And that's the story people tell themselves to justify the risk. But in British Columbia, that's not even close to the worst case outcome. The reality is you could lose your deposit, get sued for the difference if the developer resells for less, and be responsible for legal fees on top of that. So instead of losing $80,000, you could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands. And the scariest part is most people don't realize this until they're already in it. So in this video, I'm going to walk through exactly what's happening in the Vancouver condo market right now and why so many buyers are getting trapped and what you need to understand before even thinking about buying one. Because this isn't just about real estate anymore. It's about protecting your financial future. How Vancouver condos became a guaranteed win in the first place. To really get why the market is so messy right now, we have to look back just a few years to when things felt, frankly, a little bit crazy. There was this specific window of time when buying a condo in Vancouver felt like you found a literal cheat code for making money. Between 2016 and 2021, pre-sale condos weren't just homes, they were an ultimate gold rush. You'd see people literally camping out in presentation centers, lined up for blocks just to get a crack in a floor plan for a building that wouldn't even exist for 4 to 5 years. And the strategy was incredibly simple. Put down a deposit, go live your life, no mortgage, and wait for the building to finish. And for a while, it was a no-brainer. By the time the keys were ready, the market had usually climbed so high that people were sitting on six-figure gains without ever having to paint a wall or deal with a tenant. It turned real estate from a place to live into a high-stakes financial play. People stopped looking at things like, can I actually afford this? And started chasing, how much will this be in 2025? Developers saw the frenzy and just kept on feeding the beast, selling out projects before the shovel even hit the dirt. Everyone started believing the hype that Vancouver condos were a guaranteed win that only went up. But as we're seeing now, the up-only era eventually hits a wall. So what changed and why it broke the system? The problem is that the market didn't just slow down, it basically hit a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. The shift happened so fast, it left people with whiplash. Interest rates, which had been at rock bottom for years, started climbing aggressively. And that changed the math for everyone. And suddenly, that huge mortgage qualified for 3 years ago is way out of reach, or the monthly payment has doubled. And at the same time, condo prices in parts of Metro Vancouver started to soften. It wasn't a total crash, but it dropped enough to create what we call the gap. This is a scary place between the high price you agreed to pay in the frenzy a few years ago and what the property is actually worth in today's colder reality. This is where the pre-sale dream starts to fall apart. See, when you buy a pre-sale, you're locking in a price today for a product you won't get for years. You essentially are betting the world and your bank account, it will stay exactly the same or better. But when the world changes and those numbers don't line up anymore, you end up legally stuck to the deal that suddenly makes zero financial sense. And what we're seeing now is appraisers are coming in and they can't appraise these properties for what you paid for them. So you have to come up with not only the 20% deposit in the first place, but in maybe an extra 50 grand just to make the mortgage work. The closing problem nobody sees coming. This is the part of the story where most people totally get blindsided. You've waited 3 years and the building is finally done and you're excited to move in, but then the bank sends in the appraiser. And here's the gotcha moment. The bank does not care what price you and the developer shook hands on 3 years ago. They only care what the unit is worth right now on the day you close. If that appraiser says your $800,000 condo is only worth $720,000, the bank is going to lend you a percentage of that lower number. And that leaves you with a massive shortfall, often tens of thousands of dollars that you have to come up with in cash on the spot just to close the deal. And for most regular people, that kind of money isn't just sitting under a mattress. And suddenly, this safe investment turns into a nightmare where you literally cannot afford to finish the purchase, but you are legally on the hook for the full amount. You're stuck between a contract you can't break and a bank that won't give you the money. The most dangerous misconception in the market. If there's one thing that's absolutely wrecking people's lives right now, it's the myth you can just walk away and lose your deposit if you can't make the deal work. I hear it all the time. Oh, I'll just let them keep the $50,000 and move on. It doesn't work like that. These aren't just maybe agreements. They're firm, legal, binding contracts. If you don't complete the purchase, the developer can sell that unit to someone else, but, and this is a huge but, if they sell it for less than your original price, they can come after you for the difference. So if you're supposed to pay $800,000 and they eventually sell it for $700,000, you could be on the hook for that $100,000 gap plus their legal fees and interest. And plus the deposit, that's gone. The contract doesn't care if you lost your job, if interest rate spikes, or if the market dipped. It's a cold legal reality that can turn a bad investment into a life-altering financial hit that follows you for a decade. Why the assignment market isn't saving anyone. A lot of people went into these pre-sales with a plan B, tucked in their back pocket, the assignment. They figured if things got hairy, they'd just sell the contract to someone else before the building was finished and walk away with the profit, or a little profit, or a break even. It sounds like a great escape hatch on paper, but in the real world is becoming almost impossible to pull off. First of all, developers often have a ton of rules about assignments. They might ban them entirely or charge you a huge fee that eats up all the money you make anyways. But the bigger issue is if you need that buyer right now, why would a buyer take over your old expensive contract when they could just walk into a new presentation center and get a better price, brand new appliances, and maybe even a first-year mortgage-free incentive from the developer? There's zero reason for them to bail you out of a bad deal. People are realizing it way too late that their backup plan was actually just a mirage. So what happens when you try to sell? Let's say you actually manage to scrape money together and close on the unit. You think, okay, I'll just list it and get it out. But you are not the only one with that idea. In some of these big Vancouver towers, you'll see dozens of identical units hit the market at the exact same time. It's a total bloodbath for sellers. When there are 20 other units just like yours for sale, buyers get to be incredibly picky. They start lowballing and sellers start panicking, which drives the prices down. In a lot of cases, people are selling for less than they originally paid just to stop the bleeding. And keep in mind, while your unit is sitting there empty, you're still paying the mortgage, the taxes, and the strata fees every single month. And it turns into a situation where your exit feels like you're losing money every single day. The domino effect that's hitting buyers hard. One of the scariest things about real estate is how one bad move can trigger a total collapse of everything else you've built. During the boom, it was really common for people to stack pre-sales and speculate. They'd buy one, they'd buy another 6 months later, assuming they could sell the first one and pay for the second. Or the assignment market was hot as well, so they could just assign it for a profit and move on. It was a house of cards built on the idea that prices would always go up. But when the first property doesn't sell or the bank refuses to fund it, the whole chain breaks. Suddenly, you're not just defaulting on one condo, you're losing multiple deposits and facing multiple lawsuits all at once. And this is the part that people don't talk about at the dinner table. How quickly a couple of smart investments can turn into a financial meltdown that you can't really stop. This isn't just investors, this is regular people. It's easy to look at this and think just a bunch of wealthy speculator flippers getting what they deserve, but that's not just the reality on the ground. We're talking about first-time home buyers who were just trying to get into the market before it moved out of reach forever. And we're talking about families who needed a bigger place for their kids and thought, hey, a pre-sale was the most affordable thing at the time. Or seniors who were downsizing and thought they were making a safe move for their future retirement. These are people who did what they thought was the right thing, and now they're stuck in a nightmare that they didn't see coming. This isn't just about spreadsheets and interest rates. It's about real people dealing with massive amounts of stress and the fear that they've ruined their financial future. What you need to do if you're already in a situation, if you're currently holding a pre-sale contract and you're starting to sweat, the absolute worst thing you can do is put your head in the sand and hope it goes away. You need to get ahead of it now and start by having a very honest, uncomfortable conversation with your bank or mortgage broker. Don't use your numbers from 3 years ago. Use today's rates and today's rules. Then find out what your unit is actually worth right now and not what the brochure said. Most importantly, go talk to a real estate lawyer. You need to know exactly what your risks are before the developer sends that first legal notice. The sooner you face the reality of the situation, the more control you'll have over how it ends. And if you're thinking about buying right now, if you're watching this and thinking about jumping into a pre-sale in Vancouver today, please just slow down. Don't let a salesperson talk you into a limited time offer or make you feel like you're going to miss the boat. You need to be cold and clinical with your numbers and ask yourself, can I afford this if interest rates go up another percent? What if the value drops another 10% by the time it's built? You have to plan for the worst case scenario because as we've seen, the worst case scenario can absolutely happen. And it is right now, today. The biggest mistake you can make right now is underestimating how things can change between today and the day you get your keys. The bottom line, here's the raw truth. Your deposit is not your maximum risk. It's just the entry fee. If the bank market shifts or the bank says no, you can be on the hook for way more than you ever imagined. This is the reality for a lot of people in Vancouver right now. They thought they were buying a guaranteed win, but they actually bought a high risk gamble with no way out. And before you sign anything, make sure you aren't just falling in love with a shiny rendering in a sales center. Make sure you're ready for the reality of what happens if the music stops. Because the worst place to be in a deal is where the closing feels like losing, but walking away feels even worse. So reach out to your advisors, make a smart decision.